Today, I have the honor of introducing you to Peter Keeling. And Peter is Chief Executive Officer of the successful Belfast-based company Diaceutics. And we will speak today about the subject of diagnostic commercialization and precision medicine. Welcome, Peter. What inspired you to create a diagnostic commercialization company?
Hi, Patricia. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I think the first thing I would say, I'll explain my own journey in a second, but the world is almost littered with great diagnostic technology. But as all of those who have developed that technology have discovered, the hardest thing is to commercialize it. And so, this was a target. Diagnostic commercialization was one of those areas which I don't think the world has truly cracked and understood. And my own journey to this was really almost serendipitous in a way. I was in large pharma for 11 years for GlaxoSmithKline. I spent a year at MIT, my gap year at the age of 35, where I started to have an interest in the fact that diagnostics controlled 70% of the clinical decisions, but only received 5% of the reward, the dollars for that. And it always struck me there was something wrong with that. I then started a diagnostic company. I built a bricks and mortar diagnostic company that was developing testing. And I discovered how hard it was, how difficult it was, not so much to develop the technology and get it through the FDA. That in itself was tough, but how to actually create a go-to-market strategy. So in many ways, Diaceutics was my attempt to put my hands around that very particular challenge and saying what would a diagnostic commercialization company look like? And that's what really gave birth to Diaceutics. And we can explain, I'm sure, in a little bit of detail what that is. But in essence, we use data and a lab network to really drive adoption of diagnostic technology.
Fantastic, Peter. And that's really leads perfectly into my next question, is that you've been running Diaceutics now for over 15 years. So maybe you could talk about the goals and how they've changed over the years and what exactly you do.
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is that literally the goal hasn't changed. Diaceutics is unusual in that it solves for one problem. And that problem is to work alongside the pharmaceutical companies as they are launching these smart, targeted, or precision medicine drugs, which are transformative to patient health. In many instances, many of these drugs are becoming relative cures, particularly in breast cancer and other diseases. The issue is that many of the patients, in fact, up to 64% of the patients, are not getting access to these drugs because of bad testing. And that bad testing is multifactorial. Maybe it's the lab's not running the right test. Maybe the right variant of the test is not there. The sample is not collected. It doesn't really matter what the reason is. The combination of that is denying patients access to the drugs. So we have this sort of terrible storm, if you like, in precision medicine. Over 1,000 new drugs coming to the market. There's 200 drugs on the market already that require testing in the way that we think of it in precision medicine. Yet we haven't focused enough time back on how we make sure that that diagnostic ecosystem is efficiently and seamlessly driving patients to get to those drugs.
Wow, and I'm sure that's going to spark a lot of questions among our audience, Peter. But I'm thinking, reading your literature and having met you and spoken to you before, you talk a lot about the patient diagnostic journey. And I suppose, what do you mean by that, and what does it mean for your company?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is this is a deliberate choice of language to bring this back to what's really important here. And everybody who I'm sure is listening or will listen to this webinar will have a story about a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, an aunt who has been on a diagnostic journey in cancer. And it's an emotional roller coaster. It could be, I have a shadow on my lung, or it could be I have a lump on my neck, or it could be I have a pain in my neck, my back that can't be diagnosed. All of those events are part of an individual's diagnostic journey. And for us as individuals going through that, we are often, or our families going through it, it's often a chaotic time, it's an emotional time. If you look at this at a system-wide, and I'll use non-small cell lung cancer as an example, where we have fully mapped out what I would describe as the diagnostic journey. And it's quite shocking. So a typical lung cancer patient, and of course, there's no such thing, but broadly at a population level, a typical lung cancer patient will travel about 4 years from cough to the right drug. And in those 4 years, there would be anything up to 10 different testing events, 10 opportunities to redirect those patients onto the right drug, 10 missed opportunities to show those patients how to test them better. So the way we look at this with our pharma clients and others is take a whole picture, look at the whole thing, and decide how we can redirect these diagnostic pathways in such a way that we can get these patients onto the drug faster. That's the goal. Diagnostics are there to get that patient to their treatment and to that treatment outcome. And so it's the diagnostic journey for us is a language that we're introducing that brings us back to every one of these patients is having quite often a non-standardized journey, but it's a journey that we can intervene in and make better.
Wow. And you mentioned the pharmaceutical industry there. So I'm just curious, why the focus on pharma?
Yeah, it's a question we get a lot. Look, be under no illusion. Our job, all of us, our job in any form of sort of industrial management and health, our job is about patient care. Okay, that's what we're all driving for, to improve that. But you have to stand back and ask a question: is how do I really change the system? And when I looked at the diagnostic system, I literally went through this tick box in my head. Diagnostic companies often don't have the budgets to drive adoption of their diagnostic technology, which, as I've mentioned to you before, Patricia, is somewhere between $30 to $50 million per test to get this right. I mean, who has those pockets? The payers and the insurance companies, I would describe as sitting on the fence. They want to see data. They want to see a very specific intervention. They're not really thinking about that diagnostic journey. And labs and others, and even physicians, not that they don't care, of course they care, but they are very much focused on their day job. So the reason we went to the pharmaceutical industry and worked with them is they are the ones with the burning fire. They have to introduce these new drugs, and they're the ones that are, if you like, bending the arc of healthcare at this moment in time. And for us, working alongside them allowed us to redirect some of their dollars back into that broken diagnostic ecosystem and repair it where we think is necessary.
Okay, wow. And I'm sure that's going to spark a lot of questions, Peter. But Diaceutics have just released a book, a third book entitled Precision Medicine Readiness Report. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, and for those interested, go to our website, diaceutics.com, and you'll see a copy of this book. We find ourselves in a very interesting position, Patricia, that is, we were the only ones focused on this space. And as the journey of Diaceutics evolved, I found ourselves being as much teacher as we were, a stakeholder in selling product and selling wares. And that journey has continued. So in my team, I have what I believe are, some of the world experts who have focused their time on an analysis of the patient diagnostic journey data, an understanding of how labs can really contribute to the change, and experts in precision medicine at a disease level. And what we've done with these various series of books is we brought that knowledge together into sort of a joined up thought exercise. And the third book plus its sisters, book 1 and book 2, in my view, give anybody who's interested sort of a mini MBA on how this ecosystem functions, or in many instances does not function. The last of the series is a much more forward-looking. It's about what will life look like? How can we get this better? Really a sort of an inspiration, a horizon, if you like, that we can all aspire to. An interestingly, a horizon that is really quite near at hand. I firmly believe that all the technological components and the industrial components are there. But it does require integrator businesses, and I think of Diaceutics as an integrator. It does require integrator businesses to bring them together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a number of questions coming in from our audience, and interesting one. So Diaceutics won a European International Award for publicly listed companies. Can you tell us more about this award and what it represents for you and your team?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so when we launched and floated on the AIM market back in 2019, in the distant past, not many will remember that 2019 was the year when Brexit was being executed in the European, in the sort of the UK financial markets, and there were very, very few companies who dared to sort of list and float their business at that moment in time. We were one of those. We were either crazy or clever. In the end, it worked out that we were clever because we actually secured a 4 times oversubscription to our business. And on the back of that, we raised over 40 million pounds. Our goal was 20. And fundraising is not fun, as many of your, again, listeners will know. But the one thing I would say about the public markets is they have been kind to us. I think it's a good route to accessing money. And to give you an example of that, we did a secondary fundraising in 2020. And from the day we decided to raise the money, which was the 1st of April, we had the money in our bank account 45 days later. Very few places can you raise that level of capital. So for us, as a capital hungry business working alongside pharma, they want to know that you're well capitalized. They want to know that you're transparent. So the award, I think, for us was a little tick in the box that said, we have arrived on the scene. We are dare I say, a player in the space. And it's been great for us, I think, to have that cachet attached to the brand.
Oh, that's fantastic. And actually, questions come in live in terms of which pharma companies are in the vanguard of delivering precision medicine.
Well, my sort of favorite ones to watch are companies like Novartis, AstraZeneca, Roche. Obviously, I'll maybe come back to Roche in a second. Even some of the Japanese companies, Daiichi. So Daiichi and AstraZeneca at the moment are launching probably one of the most exciting therapies of our era. It's actually a drug targeting breast cancer. And the reason why this is exciting is that we've had for over 15 years a drug called Herceptin, which was targeting a particular type of breast cancer, which was people who were expressing HER2 low or HER2. That was sort of catering for about 25% of women with breast cancer. The remaining really were having to deal with traditional chemotherapy and other things. So this new drug, which is called Enhertu, is being brought to market. And in my view, Daiichi and AstraZeneca are being incredibly thoughtful about how they're managing that diagnostic journey and really learning from past mistakes and investing appropriately in building the lab network, in building the data supply, and ultimately getting patients tested the right way. So they're on my top of my list. But the other thing I would add is, we're all really still learning precision medicine. I know the word and the buzzword has been around for a decade and more, but there's 200 drugs on the market. It's still a handful, and we're still learning what each of these drugs need. So there's a lot of biotech companies coming forward. Merus, I'm trying to think of the other one in the top of my head, Blueprint Medicines. These are all really exciting smaller businesses, but they're more thoughtful about how precision medicine will transform the patient experience. So I think every pharma is shifting towards this as a model. I believe it's the new future. I don't think we're talking about a part of their business anymore. And there's one thing I will say is that precision medicine isn't just good medicine for the patient, it's actually good economic medicine. And I'm sorry to bring that back to the table, but this will drive forward and it will accelerate on the back of the economics as well as the patient impact. And so those economics, and I like to think we at Diaceutics are, illuminating those economics, in my view, guarantee the future of precision medicine. It's good for the patients, it's good for the regulators, and it's good for investors.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. And I just sometimes there's such a differential across the countries. I suppose we're not going to get into that, but there are such differential in terms of testing and precision testing across different countries. But I suppose just to wrap it all up, Peter, I mean, you've touched on it on numerous times now during this call that healthcare is almost on the brink of this revolution, that all the pieces are in place. But how can we bring this together? And I suppose what's the most exciting thing about the future? What do you see?
Well, I think the thing that's going to create the tipping point. So I would describe us as we're in a middle era at the minute of precision medicine. Middle era characterized by the fact that we have a lot of industrial companies, whether it be labs, whether it be pharmaceutical companies. We're all having a conversation amongst ourselves about how do we do this better. I go back to some of the, Rick Carson and others who way back in 2009 made a very simple but interesting observation that precision medicine will absolutely transform healthcare. Number one, and number two, that it will be driven by the patient. And I believe that. And so what we're really should be looking out for is what's happening at Google, what's happening at Amazon, what's happening at the consumer end of healthcare. Because if we can learn how to engage those individual patients in that diagnostic journey, and instead of abdicating that to someone else, namely to the physician, then I think that will be the transformation. And I think we can book our airline tickets ourselves now. We can go into our bank and see our bank account details. The next era is the patient will go in and say, I can see my diagnostic journey. I can see how to change that diagnostic journey, or I might be a giver. The technology to do that is here. And I think the most exciting thing for me is when we start to see, patients meaningfully engage and be comfortable with that diagnostic journey. And I think I said to you already, Patricia, if COVID taught us one thing, patients can take control of testing. It doesn't have to be done by someone else. We all took control of testing, so we can do this. There's no difference between testing for COVID and testing for cancer. The technology is the same. Yes, the answers are different and they have different meanings, but that's where we're at. And so Rick Carlson was right. 2009, we are on the verge of the patient taking control of precision medicine, and that's where it all changes.
And that's an exciting future, I think. And thank you so much, Peter. We are unfortunately completely out of time, so apologies to those of you whose questions I didn't get to, but I wanted to take this opportunity to say a huge thanks to Peter for the most fascinating discussion today. Thank you so much, Peter.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really, we're getting comments in that it was just really great. So thank you so much. And thank you for everybody else for joining in. And please do check out our website for our list of upcoming speakers. Have a lovely day. Thank you.